folks. Good evening or good morning. Wherever in the world it might be you're watching from, welcome to our panel. Mesdames of Mysterious Murders. My name's Cathy Ace, and I want to welcome you all to this Gold Crime Cymru Festival event, which we're able to bring you due to the generous financial support of the Welsh Government. Yay, thank you. Now, before I start, one of the things that the Crime Cymru collective was set up to do was to promote Welsh crime writing. So at the beginning of every festival event, we're running a 3-minute crime close-up, introducing new Crime Cymru members and other writers who got something that they want to bring to the table. What a fantastic opportunity to find new writers. This evening's crime close-up author is Danielle Devlin. Now, Danielle is going to join us now, and I'm going to allow Danielle to introduce her writing to you because who knows better what they write about than the author themselves. So, Danielle, please join us. Hello.
Hello,
Danielle.
hi.
Lovely
Hello.
to see you. Lovely to see you. Danielle, I'm handing over to you. The next moments are all yours. Have at it.
Thank you very much. Tonight I'm reading from my novel Burnt Offerings. It's set during the North Berwick witch trials. This extract I'm going to read, the main character Bess is trying to flee after being implicated in a murder, but she's trying to find her daughter first. So, towards the dawn, I'd left them back at the crossroads with Dr. Fian now fully in control of his wayward limbs and his mount. The stars still lingered against the inky black of night as they fought against the sunrise. I'd been grateful for their company, but beneath the silence of the tree boughs, my mind began to uncoil, stretching and flexing and allowing itself to think. What if Rivet was already looking for me? The thought of it terrified me. At any moment our paths could cross. If I could just get to Jenny and get back to the refectory unseen, then we would be safe, at least for a while. The rumours would spread like blistering damp, already dripping from the lips of the washerwomen. What happened when the bitter, twisted lies became truth? St. Andrew's refectory had no place to hide a child. I would give my mother 3 days. If she hadn't managed to find Rupert by then and put an end to this nonsense with Master Rivet, then we would have to leave. There would be nothing else for it. We'd have to flee like the Catholics. Mistress Cochrane wouldn't appreciate me arriving at such an ungodly hour. I squinted in the direction of Mill House. Not a flicker of light. I'd often wondered how she'd kept a house full of boys in line, but that was before we'd found Willie. Spare the rod and spoil the child, she'd balked, hands clasped in her lap, when I'd burst in unannounced. Willie clinging to my waist. We came to a mutual understanding. She never would raise a hand to him again, and I wouldn't call upon my mother. I carried on riding, winding my way through the dawn and into mid-morning. I'd stared at the sky, and I'd raged against God. I'd begged, and I'd pleaded, and I'd bargained, and I'd prayed. But no matter what I did, I couldn't see a way to stop what was to come. The pony heard the noise first, a great low rumbling. I felt the muscles rippling beneath my saddle as he stiffened. My sweaty palms made it hard to hold onto the reins. He twisted suddenly, throwing me sideways as I struggled to hold him back. I stared wide-eyed into the oncoming sea of faces, mad with blood fever and cries of the same. The pony snorted and tossed its head, nostrils flaring before rearing full height and bolting. I tumbled to the earth in a flurry of limbs. I watched in horror as my only means of escape disappeared, almost taking Father Cowper with it. I stood and I looked at the crowd. Most of Tranent were there, at least the ones that could be roused from their beds. Leading them was Gilbert Leith, a thick-set man with a scar that ran the length of his cheek, and his nephew Ian. Gilbert spoke first. Elizabeth Craw, you stand accused of the crime of witchcraft. What do you say? My voice died in my throat, the knot in my stomach tightened until I was almost concave with despair. I instinctively reached for my belly, feeling for anything awry. He carried on. The accused did cause the death of Master Andrew Rivet by means of witchcraft. And I'll end it there. And thank you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Danielle. Oh, I'm on the edge of my seat now. Well,
Thank you.
that was a really good reading. I know it's nerve-wracking to read in public, but what a great job you did. Thank you so much. I
Thanks
appreciate
so
it.
much. Thank
And
you.
and have a great rest of the day.
Good luck,
Thank
everyone
you for
else.
getting us off to a good start.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Hey, Sarah Ward is with us and Mary Grand is with us. Hello, Sarah. Hello, Mary.
Hi, Cathy. Hi,
Yeah,
Mary.
Good morning, or good afternoon, good
yeah,
evening, wherever in the world you might
yeah,
be.
sure.
Now we've got a wonderful session coming up, and for those of you who have not read the description on the website, here it is. Mesdames of Mysterious Murders. If you like your crime fiction to have Christie-esque twists and female main characters, this is the panel for you. These three crime writers, that's us ladies, have mastered the art of creating devious killers, thrilling plots, and women who risk everything to reveal the truth. I mean, I will say, I don't think I've mastered it, but isn't that the joy of writing? That we keep trying to master and master and master it, and we can always keep trying to do it better. But I have to say, having had the opportunity to read the books by you folks, yes, brilliant reads, highly recommended to all those of you watching. And although the website is going to list 3 books, one against each of our names, which you can use to access those books after you've watched this video, there are other books by us, so please do have a hunt around. And if you're purists, you might want to start at the beginning of our series, but if you're a daredevil diver inner, just dive in with the ones that we're speaking about today. So welcome, Sarah. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you.
My name, as I've said, is Cathy Ace. We're going to be with you for the better part of the next hour, and you will have a chance to ask us questions at the end. So as we're chatting away, please do have a think about questions you might want asked. You can type them in, and we've got a lovely lady, Sarah Todd Taylor, who's monitoring all those questions, and she's going to deliver them to us at the end of the session. So we've got a chance to answer your questions as though you were here in person to ask them yourselves. So don't forget you've got that opportunity, and be gentle with us though, right? We want nice questions. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to briefly introduce my 2 other members of the panel, one at a time, of course, and then I'm going to invite them to speak to you about their work. So Sarah, I'm going to kick off with you because we've got 2 for the price of 1 here, folks. Sarah Ward is also writing as Rhiannon Ward. Now, as Rhiannon Ward, her other persona, she's already received great acclaim for her Gothic novels. Indeed, The Shadowing was the Daily Express Book of the Year. Oh, yay. Now she's turned her talents to psychological suspense with what I would call is a brooding sense of a true closed circle mystery. Now, Sarah's series features Mallory Dawson. It began with The Birthday Girl, developed with The Sixth Lie, and there's been the recent release of The Vanishing Act, which I must admit I've not yet had a chance to read, but I'm looking forward to it.
It's not out yet. July, 4th
it's
of July.
Not.
4th of July.
Well,
Yeah.
the 4th of July. Okay. Oh, well, that's a good, everybody's off in America for the 4th of July. They can all have a day off and read that. Fantastic. So anyway, I'm going to hand over to Sarah so she can introduce herself and her work to you. Over to you, Sarah.
Oh, thanks, Cathy. What time of day is it there with you in Canada?
Well, I'm on the Pacific coast of Canada, and it's
Okay.
10 past 12 in the afternoon.
Wow.
So if you hear a rumble, it's because I haven't had lunch yet.
Okay, fair enough. So I live in West Wales in Ceredigion, and as Cathy said, my new series is set in West Wales, Pembrokeshire, Carmarthenshire, the old Dyfed sort of area. But before that, I wrote 2 Gothic thrillers as Rhiannon Ward. They were standalones and they were historical. So I used my middle name, Rhiannon, because I wanted to sort of differentiate myself from my contemporary crime. And there's also, because it's Gothic, there's a slight supernatural element to my Rhiannon Ward books, because as well as crime fiction, I love ghost stories. So I managed to put the supernatural into the Rhiannon Ward. And I started my writing career with 4 books set in the Derbyshire Peak District, where I lived for about 13 years, and that was a series. So I've gone back now to writing a series, and I've actually got another series coming in October that's going to be announced on Friday. So I won't preempt the announcement, but it's set in New England. So it's not in the UK. It's set in the US. So that's a little bit about me. But I'll be talking today in particular about my second in the Mallory Dawson series, The Sixth Lie, which is set in the beautiful St. David's.
And it is a lovely area to set a book. And you've played to the strengths or challenges or dangers of the area extremely well. Thank you, Sarah. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
And on the other hand, on my screen, on the other hand, I have Mary Grant. Now, Mary Grant has a series which is subtitled The Isle of Wight Killings, which is a big clue to where the books are set. Thank you for that. Now, I would call these classic British cozies, and they feature Susan Flynn, who, bless her heart, is a dog lover. So we've already got that in common. And she's a very determined sleuth. 2 books have already been published in this series, Death at Castle Cove and Death at St. Jude's. And I'm just going to, again, hand over to Mary, who's the best person to introduce herself and her work to you.
Well, thank you, Cathy. Lovely to be here. Yeah, I'm Mary Grant. I was born in Cardiff, so I have my Welsh roots. But for the last 30 years now, I've lived on the Isle of Wight. And that is where I set my murder mysteries. And I write, as Cathy said, classic sort of murder mystery whodunits. My background was sort of growing up on Agatha Christie, really. And when I started walking my dog around the island, I got the idea of, oh, good place to write some whodunits. And so each whodunit is set in a different part of the island. But in the new, so I wrote like 3 standalones in different areas of the island, and then now I'm on the series with Susan, and she is living. She has just moved in the book I'm talking about tonight, Death at Castle Cove, Death at St. Jude's. I'm sorry, and that's in a village, set in a village just along from where I live, called Bryston, but we call it Bishopstone, so that nobody thinks that I'm writing about them. And I have moved the pub as well. So Susan, yes, she moves for a new start really into Bishopstone. And she's just thrown herself, she's actually just come out of a 40-year marriage that has broken down. And she's starting again. And she's just thrown herself into village life when a body is found at the base of the church tower. And it is then that. And Susan, for all sorts of reasons, is sure this is no accidental fall. She has a circle of 6 suspects, and it's her mission to discover which one of them is the killer.
And it's a jolly good read. Thank you very much. Lovely, Mary. Welcome, welcome from the Isle of Wight. So we're quite ranging around here, aren't we? And as I said, I'm Cathy Ace, so I'll introduce myself. Hello, I'm Cathy Ace. Nice to meet you. Born and raised in Swansea, but I left when I was 40 and I ran away to the colonies. So I live on the Pacific coast of Canada now, which is where I write. But I'm hanging on to the accent because my husband's also from Swansea, and I talk to my mum and my sister in Swansea every day. I think, in fact, through lockdown, my Swansea accent got stronger because the only human beings I was talking to were all actually with Swansea accents, which is quite funny. So welcome to the Pacific coast of Mexico. I write 2 series. Today I'm going to be focusing on the Kate Morgan mysteries. This is the 13th book in the series, The Corpse with the Opal Fingers, which I think you can see is set in Australia. The thing with these books is Kate Morgan is a Welsh Canadian like me, short, food-loving, slightly bossy university professor, but she's a professor of criminal psychology, whose specialism is on victim profiling. But other than that, she's very much like me. And they're told in the first person. So a lot of people I've met who've met, they know my voice. When they read these, apparently they can hear me talking to them. Poor things, poor things. I do also write another series, which I'm going to give a mention now, and then I'll shut up about it. The Wise Inquiries Agency Mysteries. This is the most recent book in the series, which is book 9 in the series. Book 10 comes out in June. As you can see, these look cozier. They have the alliteration in the title. So while I would say my Kate Morgan mysteries are classic Christie-esque mysteries, these are much cozier. They feature a quartet of professional private investigators one is Welsh, one is Irish, one is Scottish, one is English, WISE, and they run their business out of a converted barn in the grounds of a Welsh stately home. So these are always based in Wales, in the recurring location of the fictional village of Anwen by Wye, although I do mention the real places of Hay-on-Wye and Brecon and Builth Wells. And then they go out solving cases into other parts of Wales, and sometimes they stray as far as England or Scotland or Ireland. Heavens above. So those are cozier. There are cats and lots of tea is drunk, gallons of tea is drunk. And I think they're putting the world supply of, I don't know, bourbon biscuits under threat. So yes, Christie-esque one series with the Kate Morgan mysteries, and then cozier with the Wise Inquiries Agency mysteries. However, I think given the title of the panel and given what we've all just said about our work, it's no surprise that we all do feature females quite heavily in our work. And that's not a bad thing, you know, especially given that we are women. So I just want to take a moment right up top here, and given the title of our panel, I think probably my first question might sound a bit obvious, but I think it should be asked. And I'm going to pose this to you first, Mary. Why a female protagonist for you? I mean, you could have had a male dog walker, and we all write about men as well as women, but why is Susan Susan and not a male character?
Yeah, it's an interesting, you know, I think I just sort of almost took it for granted. I just slipped. As soon as I started to try and think of who I would want as my main character, I thought of Susan, and I don't think it's really crossed my mind that she might be male. I love writing about women, and I think having a female detective is a really positive and very proactive role for a female character, because she has to be confrontational, she has to be determined, often she has to take her own route, stand out from the crowd almost. And I like that, because I think, and the other thing I decided when I was creating Susan was that I wanted her to be an older lady, an older woman, more my age actually, in her early 60s. Because I think there's this sort of like almost a myth about older women that, you know, I don't know if you've heard that expression, like when women say, oh, I feel like we become invisible. I hate that expression. I don't think it's actually particularly true, but I think there is a sort of feeling of women being conforming and quiet, and they can lose their past, they can lose, people don't see their past, they don't see their dreams. And through Susan, I felt this was a way of showing a woman who can hold on to her past, say, look, actually, I was at Greenham Common Peace Camp, and I've done this and I've done that, and I have dreams and things I want to do. And I think particularly putting her in the position of having come out of a 40-year marriage, so she moved from home to living 40 years with her husband, and now for the first time in her life, she has her own home, her own life. And actually, although she is a bit shell-shocked, she's also quite excited, because the first time she thinks, oh, what colour do I want on my walls? What colour sofa do I want? I can go out, I can come in, and in many ways it gives her the freedom to do the detecting as well, because no one's saying, do you think you want to be going out? She thinks, no, I'm off. I'm going to do this. And she's finding a whole new sort of side of herself. Well, a side that was always there.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
I love the way you did that in the book, actually, where her anxiety about making those choices just for herself for the first time ever is something that she really does grapple with. But you use it also as a launch pad for not just choosing a paint color, but for finding a murderer. You know, it's you take one step, it's a slippery slope, you know. You go from choosing a paint color to tracking down killers. And I think that's a delightful balance that you struck ever so well. So good for you. And actually, Sarah, when it comes to your work, I mean, again, Mallory, the female character, but similarly, the backstory playing into the fresh start. So given her backstory, which I would encourage you to tell us about, and the fresh start thing, could have gone either way. much more, not necessarily easily, but why the female choice?
So yeah, the backstory was probably what influenced the fact she's female. So I had this idea of a former Met detective. I didn't want to write a police procedural. I'd written 4 of them, and then I'd gone to my standalones, and I wanted to write contemporary crime again, but I didn't want to write a police procedural per se. So it was like I had an idea of someone who had been in the police. So she has all the detective skills, but she's been invalided out of the police. So she's stabbed in the line of duty and is invalided out. And then she becomes a night manager on a Welsh island based on Caldy Island. And so her character sort of just came. It was never going to be male. I've had male protagonists and written female protagonists, but it was sort of the character of Mallory came fully formed. And for the first book, The Birthday Girl, there's very much her in a battle of wits with another woman who we don't know but is a poisoner who is on the island, and it's one of 3 women. So it's this idea of the protagonist, you know, the person solving the crime is a woman, but the person who is doing all the killings is definitely a woman as well. So it's this sort of battle of wits. But when I then thought, well, when my publisher said, oh, we'd like to make it a series, I thought, well, I can't have a load of murders on Caldy Island. I mean, you know, it'd be like Midsummer Murders, wouldn't it? You know, all this sort of things happening on a really small place. So I needed to widen it out to West Wales. And then at the end of The Birthday Girl, there's a character called Harry Evans, D.I. Harry Evans, and he sort of does the sort of police bit right at the end. And I've moved him now into my series. So Mallory is definitely the focus. So I definitely have the female character. Main protagonist, but I also have now a slight police element to it because, you know, in Britain, and it's the same in Canada, and you know, you can't just have a sort of a lay person just solving the crimes. There needs to be a police input. So now the series I feel is much more of a sort of two-hander. I have a female character. I like writing male characters as well. So I think, you know, enjoy having a female protagonist, but I enjoy writing men as well.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Well, it's interesting what you say about that, because Kate Morgan is very much the lead character, you know, the Kate Morgan mystery. So it's a given she's going to be the bossy one, making sure everything's done. But you're right. I mean, first of all, I made the decision to set each book in a different part of the world. Because she travels and because I've always traveled. And there is this thing, the Cabot Cove syndrome, you know, where everybody who turns up in a local village it's like a Star Trek thing. They're wearing a red shirt. They're either going to die immediately or they're going to be the one who did the killing. So it's always that challenge. And when I started writing, I thought the best way to avoid that was to send my detective off out into the world. So she's a bit more like Typhoid Mary, really. If Kate Morgan's got a boarding pass in her hand, don't go there. There will be bodies, sometimes quite a lot. But you're right. When you've got an amateur sleuth, the challenge then is not just to bring them into contact with crime, but to allow them to gain access somehow to information that would not necessarily be available to a truly amateur sleuth. I mean, I would say Susan, Mary, your Susan is a true amateur sleuth. Yeah. Sarah, obviously, Mallory's got policing chops behind her. And with Kate Morgan being a professor of criminal psychology who has consulted for the police department, she's a sort of semi-amateur sleuth. But I've brought Bud Anderson in as her partner in crime and developing through the books as her partner in life, because not only is he a retired police officer, but I also decided I was going to give him this very mysterious job, which I'm now delighted I did, because he was heading up a gangbusters team, which meant that he had to have CSIS clearance, which is the Canadian Secret Intelligence Service, and was working Internationally, which certainly puts him in jeopardy sometimes. So Kate has to rescue him, which I rather like. Or he does have connections that he can draw upon wherever in the world they might be. He knows someone who knows someone who knows someone. And don't we all know how helpful that is when you're plotting? Because it gives you an opportunity to draw in that additional expertise. Kate was always going to be a woman for me because she is my voice. She's better at editing her snarky thoughts than I am. Because quite often what I'll write is something snarky was what I thought, and then something polite is what I said. And sometimes I'm not quite that good as she is. But yeah, she was always going to be a reflection of me. Because honestly, when I started writing, it was my voice that came out. So I think when you're starting out, and the first Kate book in the series was my first novel. So whereas we're talking about novels that have come after for you, I started in the first person and then went on in the Wise to go beyond that and speak through several voices. But the female aspect is great. The writing about men is necessary. So are any of the men in your books, like I've said, Kate is very much based on me. A lot of people ask me, is Bud based on my husband? So when my husband comes to conventions with me, are you Bud? Is what people ask. And he's not. He's definitely not. There are aspects of him that are. But are any of the male characters in your books reflections of male characters in your life? Which might be difficult if they're the baddies. But go on, Mary, any men in your books who've come from your life? And don't say Susan's ex-husband, because I pray that's not true.
No, no, no. I think Robert, he's based on, I wouldn't say just one person I know, but a sort of type of man that I know. And he's just, he's helpfully, helpfully an ex-policeman. But so he is my little sort of way into some information that I need. But he's more than that, because he's a complete breath of fresh air to Susan, whose ex-husband was very intense, very quiet, whereas Robert is much more practical and outgoing and sporty, all these things that are quite new to her, really. And I like that. I find it very refreshing to write about. And yes, he is based on one or two people I know, but I won't say their names.
Of course not. But that's why we mash up people that we know. Do you do that, Sarah? Mash up people so that they'll never recognize themselves, and we take all the best or worst parts from them to create the character we need for that particular role. Do you do that?
Do you know what? I don't. Very few of my characters. In fact, I don't think any are based on people I've come in. Sometimes mannerisms, things that they do. You think that things that are irritating. If I don't like my character, I give them an irritating mannerism that I've seen somebody else do. But I don't base it on people, except my Harry Evans in my Welsh series. There were sort of two influences that influenced his character when I was writing it. So the first one was I was thinking about the book during lockdown, the sort of towards the tail end of the lockdowns, and I was watching a lot of Columbo, the detective, and his Mac is based on Columbo's Mac. It's only his Mac, but it's this idea, you grab any old Mac. I love the sort of, the shabbiness of Columbo. And the other thing was, and I people often say, ask me, do you have a film star or who would play them if it was in TV? And I've never any idea, because that's not how I think. I get inside the character's head. I don't, not like which person would play. But the person I've got is a young Michael Sheen in my head. That's
right.
That sort of curly hair, but not his age now, because Harry's in his early 40s and Michael Sheen's I think probably about my age. But it's that sort of character. So unusually for me, I do have quite a distinct distinct view of what he looks like, which I normally don't. What about you, Cathy? I mean, do you sort of base? You said Bud's not based on your husband, but is he based on anybody?
Well, he's actually based. Well, I did know a police officer here locally whose name was Bud. That's not why I named the character Bud. He was of Icelandic extraction, whereas my Bud's of Swedish extraction. Yeah. But he wasn't based on him. He's based upon a gathering together of characteristics I needed that character to have. Yeah. But I think the more that I write him, and the longer, I mean, Kate and he have been together now for 13 books. Of course, as you said, Mary, the age thing, they're aging a lot slower than I am. When I started writing Kate, she was about my age. I think I was 50 and she was 48. And now I'm in my 60s and she's still only 50. So, they're not aging as fast at all. And we all play with that and enjoy that. I just have to keep remembering not to give her as many aches and pains as I have, because she's still only 50. She's got all that to look forward to. Although I am giving her hot flashes because I think that's only fair. But the way that we age our characters and the way they become a part of our lives. I mean, when you're 2-3 books in, I remember thinking, oh, I don't know how I'm going to develop these characters, but the development comes over a period of time. But what is interesting is this time crunch thing. People will say to me, oh, it's book 13 now. Why hasn't Kate changed more? She's incredibly judgmental in book 1. Book 2, she's being told off for being judgmental. By book 13, she's trying really hard to be judgmental, but it's only like 3 years down the line. So with physical and emotional injuries to grapple with, Sarah, with the trauma of a divorce to overcome, Mary, you're planning forward. How do you, as a writer, force yourself to not push the character as far as you come between books and keep the character true within their timeline? Because I think within a series, managing the timeline is one of the things that we as authors face as a real challenge. I remember Sue Grafton always used to say, writing all the Kinsey Milhone books set within the 1980s. You know, Kinsey was, what had started off as a contemporary series became a historical series as she was writing it. So how are you grappling with the Bible of timeline management for your characters? Sarah, what about you? Because you really have got a very physical and mental thing to deal with there.
Yeah, so Mallory in the first book is still really suffering with the injury to her leg, that she was stabbed in the leg, and that's quite a big thing in the first book, because it's sort of the physical issue as she's trying to hunt this poisoner. She actually, you know, we all, when we're feeling ill, we don't feel as robust, and that's, I really play with it, I think, in the first book. I didn't want to just keep with it, really, but then again, I don't want her to suddenly, you know, to be running around. So in the second book, you know, it still causes issues, but it's nothing like it was in the first book. And in the third book, I have to remember she has got a bad leg, you know, so, you know, I must refer to it. She can't be running around. But actually, what's aging her, not aging her, but aging the books more, is she has a son. And I didn't want to just keep him perpetually 15, basically, because he has various issues. And so he's 15, then 16, and he'll be 17. So they are about a year apart, because otherwise that relationship's going to be too static. And that's really odd when it's a teenager, because teenagers, you know, change really quickly. So Mallory will age in my books, and Toby, her son, will age as well, because I think the issues that he's got an eating problem, that's going to change. Him having a difficult relationship with food when he's 15 is going to be different to when he's 17 and when he's 20 and 21. So yeah, so I think it's having children that's making her age, actually. Yeah,
right. I mean, that is a good beat to have. Yeah. As the books come out, you've got that beat, and readers can come in and identify with the passing of time. How are you going to handle that aspect of things, Mary? Because Susan's got different challenges, and you might, you know, you've got the dogs as well. Dogs, yes, and pets are always a challenge.
Yeah, but the thing is, when I wrote the first in the series, Death at Castle Cove, I hadn't set out to write a series. And I got to the end of it, and I suddenly had this little team, really. I had Susan, I had Robert, and of course there's Alice, her friend in the nursing home, who's my Miss Marple, really, who's just, I mean, she's actually 92. And I thought, oh, so what I tended to do is squash time up, actually, rather than spread it out. I'm squashing it up. So, you know, we literally go from season to season.
Yeah.
Yeah. Partly for Alice, really, because, you know, at 92, I can't really say 5 years later, because then she'd be 90, you know, 7 years earlier, so on. So I'm actually sort of I don't have the a sort of like a teenage son to worry about with age-wise. So I think we just sort of go from season to season, actually.
Yeah.
But actually, she's changing quite quickly, I think, Susan, and I'm learning a lot about her as we go along.
And don't you find that as a writer? I mean, I've never been fortunate enough that a character's walked through the door fully formed. Yeah, when people tell me that, I want to smack them because it's like, well, that was nice for you.
That was
I
nice.
spent weeks, months working out the psychology of this character. I've researched their backstories. I know where they and their parents went to school. I know enough about what they'd have learned and what they grew up with in their pocket as a treat. And you're saying they just walked through the door fully formed. That's definitely SmackDown talk. But when it comes to developing lead characters, I think as authors, we all realize we're going to have to invest in developing those lead characters. When you're writing a series, there will be recurring characters. Mary, you will have recurring characters. Sarah, you've given yourself the opportunity for different characters. I certainly set myself up from the beginning for a totally different cast of characters each book, except for Kate and Bud, and a few recurring characters. Now, I know why I did that. I did that because I like the idea of this changing carousel of characters, all with their own backgrounds. And because each of my books is set in a different place, Kate's always a visitor there. And I want the reader to meet some characters who are of that place. The place is in their bones. They and their ancestors have created that place. So we get the layer upon layer of history. Then I've always got an opportunity for relatively recent incomers. You know, the sort who go to live somewhere because they love it and then immediately want to change it. You know those people. And then you've got the visitors, which Kate always is. So I do firmly believe not everybody's story is mine to tell, but I've given the Kate books the opportunity to have people of a place tell their stories. So those supplementary characters for me always needed to change, which is why I set myself up that way for Kate. Now, Mary, you've moved, Susan, within a small island, so there are still commonalities. You know, it's let's drive from here to there and it's only 45 minutes, so it's not a world away. Those supplementary characters are therefore likely to be recurring. How are you going to, and this is without giving away any spoilers, how are you going to come up with fresh blood? Because fresh blood is so good.
Yes, I think it's interesting. I think it's funny. I mean, I've lived on the island now for 30 years, and although it seems a very small place, to me, you know, I think West White is a world away from, you know, you say, oh, she didn't move far because in the first book in Castle Cove, she was in Ventnor. To me, Ventnor's a long, we said, should we go back? Oh, a bit far. We haven't got to Ventnor today. And it's like another world over in the South Island because you've got all the, it's much more touristy, it's very different. So, like, so she's come back to me, actually. She's come back over to the west side. But then there's every village in a sense, and every area is different. And so for the next one, she's actually going to a different part. So I think she needs to come out of the village. And then I've got an idea for the one after as well. So there's plenty of ways. With it being a holiday place, and there's plenty of ways I can get her moving around the island, and we've got manors and castles and all sorts that we can use. So that's it's because it is very cozy, but it's also very plot driven, and the plots matter to me. So I need new plots each time, if you know what I mean, and I have to keep finding new groups. And I can't use the people in the village every time. You run out, wouldn't you?
Because it will end up empty. Yes.
So yes,
just corpses everywhere.
So the next one that'll be coming out later is although it's not physically not that far away, it's a manor and it's a whole different group of people on holiday that she gets involved with. So it's not, you know, in a sense, it's nothing to do with the village, although she pops back, so you've got that familiarity. But and the dogs stay the same. But, you know.
Good. So, I'm glad the dogs are staying the same. That's good news. That's good news. Now, Sarah, as I say, you've given yourself the possibility, and even within West Wales, there's a chance to move around. Is that what your cunning plan is, to shift the location of the action for fresh challenges and fresh opportunities to kill people off?
Well, what I'd forgotten, because my previous 2 books had been standalones, is that how nice it is to write series and you have recurring characters. Now, because there's a police element to it now, there's the police that appear in all the books that Mallory's in, and she has a son and an ex-husband and so on. So that's useful. But the thing that I'm trying to sort of, when I'm writing about setting, I try and sort of make it really sort of reflect the reality of where it is set. So in West Wales, a bit like the Peak District when I lived in Derbyshire, it's a big difference between winter and summer. So in summer, it's absolutely rammed in Ceredigion, you know, following the caravans and everyone down to the beaches.
Yes.
In the winter, it's absolutely dead, you know, there's absolutely nothing. And it's trying to sort of reflect that. So Mallory, and for example, trying to find somewhere to live. Now, Mallory is a bit of she doesn't really know what she's doing because she's been pensioned off, and she does act as an advisor to the police, but she's also like, what am I doing with my love life? What am I doing, you know, overall? Am I going to be spending my rest of my life in Wales when I'm not Welsh? And so she was a night manager. She loses that job because obviously she's catching a poisoner. Then she's living in a rented accommodation in St. David's, knowing it's really expensive, and come summer, she's not going to be able to afford it. In the third book, she's living on a caravan park because that's all she can afford is a caravan. And so, you know, you can sort of move people around to reflect the reality of somebody who doesn't really have a job, because she takes itinerant jobs alongside when she's sort of helping the police, to reflect what's happening really in the country, to show. And my next book, The Vanishing Act, is set in the summer. It's the heat of the summer, so it's quite nice to set something hot. I know you're used to it, Cathy, but you know, it's not, you know, we don't. Most books are sort of in Wales are sort of dark, you sort of hinterland, aren't they? Dark and gloomy.
Yeah.
But it's nice to, so that's, I do move her around because there's some beautiful places in West Wales, and so there's no shortage of locations.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I'm also trying to reflect the reality of someone trying to make a living here where wages aren't high, basically.
Yeah, I mean, and that's an aspect of real life that comes in. And I think when we create these worlds for our readers, there's a sort of an unspoken contract between us. We will give them a situation where one person constantly comes into contact with dead bodies, if they will suspend their disbelief for long enough to allow us to do that. And then we can all go on a pleasant, enjoyable journey where it's all tied up with a big bow at the end of it, and there are comeuppances. However, what I would say is I'm big on comeuppances. I like the Christie shape book, where you have red herrings, multiple suspects, you work through the clues, and at the end there's the big denouement, you know, there's the literal unmasking. And I know the shapes of your books are very similar in that respect. We've all clearly been influenced by that shape of a book. But there's also a challenge that comes with the Christie-esque shape of book, which is, can you sustain that contract in an ongoing way? And I think changing place and changing tempo and changing the scenery can help. But keeping the constant is important. So as we're going forward, while I'm going to continue to send Kate around the world, the next book coming out later this year is going to be set in Tahiti. So doing the research for that was lovely. When it comes to the worlds that we're creating, do you, like me, use real places and then invent the locales for the bad things that happen to protect the innocent or indeed the guilty? And if so, doing that, what's more fun, writing about real places or inventing fake places? Sorry, Mary.
I'm a bit of both, but basically most places are based on a real place. Like Death at St. Jude's is based in Brighton. I've had people from Brighton say, "Oh, I recognise that one at the village shop," and like at the church isn't actually called St. Jude's. It's called St. Cathy.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, because I think, funnily enough, one of the characters in Death at St. Jude's is the chiropractor, and I met a lady who said, "Oh, I'm a chiropractor in Brighton." I said, this is why I called it Bishopstone. And I have a
Good plan.
disclaimer to say this is based on no one. This is, everyone in it is fictitious. And I said, and I have moved the pub to opposite the church. So
Good
I like
plan.
that I can go there and I can walk around it, and it feels. I like having the basic geography of the place. I like the fact I can see the sea in the distance and the downs at the back, because they're all places I go all the time. But
Is that the same for you? Sorry.
yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah.
So is that the same for you, Sarah? That St. David's is St. David's, and people will visit St. David's. They're not going to be using your book necessarily as a guidebook, I hope. But do you like writing that, or do you like then the invented specific locales, which are written in detail with a real atmosphere?
My natural preference is not to be real, without a doubt, because I like when I write my book, I want it to be plot driven, like Mary, and yourself. I just want to get the plot down, and obviously the characters and the setting is important, but I don't want them to drive the story. And when it was in St. David's, St. David's is St. David's. It's the cathedral, and so I had to sort of check out the streets and work out. Part of it is in St. Non's, which is the shrine near St. David's, and I had to work out how a little boy could walk down, which is fine, but it took me out of what I wanted to be doing, which was writing the plot. It's just that it's such an iconic place. I just thought, there's no point making up a Welsh town with a cathedral by the sea, is there? When you've got St. David's anyway. But so for the third book, I'm using Breckfast Forest, which is a real place, but it's a house that doesn't exist, and I can just do whatever I want with it, really. So my preference would be to be a real place like Breckfast Forest, or like Caldy Island, an island like Caldy Island off the coast of Pembrokeshire, but just completely fictional. It just means it's much more fun writing it, I think.
Yeah. As I respond to this particular point, I'm going to invite Sarah Todd Taylor to join us, who's been accumulating all these gazillion questions from our viewers tonight. But I was the same way. I mean, with the Corpse with the Opal Fingers is set in Sydney, and a place called Katoomba in the Blue Mountains in New South Wales. And both places are real, obviously. And the dinner cruise where the book opens is a real thing. And you can't not have the iconic opera house and the bridge and all of that. But when I took them to Katoomba, whilst that is also a real place, people might well go there because they want to see the Three Sisters, which is a magnificent rock formation. But I invented a base. It's not an Airbnb, because I wouldn't use a brand name like Airbnb, but we all know what I mean. It's like a VRBO thing where they rented a house. And that's all fake. So yes, there's the joy of the fakery, which is inspired by the reality. And fakery and reality is what we do, because we bring it all together: real characters, fake murders, real suspects, and real killers. And I wonder what our real viewers tonight are wanting to ask us. Sarah Todd Taylor's joined us. Thank you for being with us, Sarah. Who's asking what?
Thank you. Absolutely fascinating stuff. It's sparked lots of questions, so I'll get straight to them. Alex Hawley says, hello, everybody. Is there anything special about the female mind that leads to mystery that the panel can discuss? There's something about the way women think.
Okay. Well, look, since I am a psychologist and I write about a psychologist, you can argue both sides of the coin. The human brain is the human brain, and there's this huge battle or conversation between nature and nurture, and the extent to which females are raised in a particular way within society, or within certain parts of society, that differs from the way that men are raised within society, and whether that leads to a difference in outlook or ability to deal with problem solving or multitasking or whatever it might be. And it is a huge discussion to which there is no end or right answer. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, I don't. Is this sort of the question? I just don't know how to answer it. It's like when people ask, why do women read so much crime fiction as opposed to men? It's just like, I don't really know. I mean, I guess that, sort of, we often identify with the characters and with the sort of fear of crime, really. But I'm not sure. Are women more devious? I'm not sure.
Oh, we're on such dangerous territory here.
Mary?
Oh, you don't have much to add to that, actually. I think they've said very well.
Anne Patrick is asking, Sarah, why did you decide to set your next book in the USA? And I guess generally for the whole panel, what made you choose the settings you chose?
So my next series is set in New England, and has an archaeologist and I wanted to explore the idea. She's a British archaeologist, and I was, chatting to somebody, an archaeologist over here, and I wanted to. It's to do with the plot, which is around sort of ritual house protection and the witches' marks and so on, and they were quite strong in Wales, but I didn't want to set a new series in Wales. But they were taken taken to the US with the early settlers, and it was just a perfect. And the other thing is, it's set in a university, and I was working in a British university, and I just didn't want to use a British setting, so it's in a very exclusive college, like the ones you get in New England. So it was almost like the setting and the plot drove. The plot drove the setting. So it's a bit of a challenge actually writing, not in a country that you live in, but really enjoyable. So I hope people will like it.
For me, really, I think. Well, I started before I was writing murder mystery. I wrote women's fiction, and I set most of those in Wales actually. And it was only one day as I was walking up on the downs here, I suddenly thought, oh, it'd be a good place for a murder. And that the idea, and I thought, and it was like almost like a step of faith, really. I thought, right, I'm going to finally write that murder mystery I've always wanted to write, and I'm going to sit it here where I live. And because I can go to places like Castle Cove, the one before Death at St. Jude's, we walked all around there, spent ages looking at places. I rang up the paramedics over here and said, how would you get a body out of here without trying to sound like a completely crazy woman on the phone? And I like that aspect of it. I like the fact that I can go to the places, and also I've got a lot of readers over here who just love reading about where they even if I give things different names, they know the areas and places I live. So and it's such a beautiful island. And when I was taken on by my publisher, they were very excited that it was set here on an island and the Isle of Wight, because there's special things about an island, and it's a great place to set sort of. So I think.
Mine was easy. I mean, the first book in the series is set in the south of France. It's set in Nice. And I used to live there for 3 or 4 months each year. And it's actually the first murder, which takes place in the first paragraph of the first page, takes place at a dining table in an apartment which belongs to friends of mine. They allowed me to use their apartment. I changed the name of the building, but their apartment really was the quarters where the head of the Gestapo lived during the Second World War. Overseeing the whole of the area. So it was a hated building, and there really are pictures of this building with the massive swastikas on it. And there really are Roman ruins just up the road. So I was able to use all the real history. And because I've spent my entire life traveling, working and traveling, so I've spent months and months in Budapest. Why wouldn't I want to set a book there? I've spent months and months in Pacific coastal Mexico. Why wouldn't I want to set a book there? Amsterdam, I worked there quite a lot. And so because I've had such a peripatetic life, for me, it was natural to take Kate to all the places where I've lived or worked, because my joy and delight in those places is something I'm now able to share with people. And of course, she loves her food and she loves her drink. So she's able to indulge in all of the foods and drinks that I've indulged in there. And I enjoy bringing those different cultural aspects to people's notice. You're right, though. People like to read about where they live, but they also like to read about where they've been on holiday, or where they're going to go on holiday, or where they are going on holiday. People often send me photographs. This one set in Australia. I've had loads of people send me photographs holding this at the Sydney Harbour. Look, I've got my book with me and I'm at Sydney Harbour. And I love those photographs of people taking the book that's set somewhere to that place. So yeah, she will keep on traveling, and I'll keep pushing where she's going, and yeah, I'll keep her moving around. Yeah.
Grand. Um, Louise Colvin has asked whether any of you would ever wish to co-write with another author, and if you did, would it be a crime book?
Oh, look, I'm just going to come up and put my hand. I'm such a control freak. I can barely write with myself sometimes. You know, some authors will say, oh, my character said they were going to do this, and my character took this side road and I followed them. No, I'm sorry. My characters do what I tell them when I tell them. They say the words I'm telling them they're going to say. Otherwise, the plot is not going to work out. They can't go wandering off. I'm an OCD plotter. And if I had to work with someone else, there would be blood on the carpet, and it would probably be theirs or mine if I got that annoying. So no, couldn't do it.
I can't see how you do it, because for me, tone is really, really important, and the voice. And I just wonder how you'd share a voice and tone with somebody else. So no, it's not something I would do.
No. I couldn't. And to be honest, my process, which is to plot and then write, then go back and plot and then write, would drive somebody else crazy, because I change my mind all the time, and things change and develop all the time. And they just be writing the next chapter. I'd say, oh, actually, by the way, they're not going to do that now. No, it wouldn't work. I'd drive somebody absolutely mad. I'd drive myself mad. I'd drive somebody else even madder, I think.
I admire those who can do it, but
yeah.
A process was something that actually sparked a bit of discussion in the chat. And I think it was when you were talking about your characters, Cathy. And Sarah has asked, do you keep notes on your characters, all of you? Do you have kind of notebooks full of details about them?
Personally, yes, I do. For Kate and Bud, I do. I think when you're writing, many people will have what they call the series Bible. So that for recurring characters, you can easily check how old they were, what their eye color was, the physical descriptions, but also the background and what happened to them. So I do that. However, I don't do that as rigorously as I should for all my other characters, because then I would end up writing a book about characters. The Bible would be like a book, and I wouldn't write the book. And I should probably be better at that. And one day when I win the lottery, I will hire someone to go through all of my books, make all of those notes, and then I'll have a handy dandy index. But I'm half good at it.
I'm terrible at it. So I'm always going back to the previous book to see what someone's mother's called or whatever. I do write when I'm writing the actual book. I do keep a list of characters and names and so on. But I then have to dig that out when I come to the next one, just to see the recurring characters and stuff. I'm not. Everything's in my head. I don't really write much down at all, to be honest. So when I do have to sort of flick between books to try and remind myself. I'm not a huge plot. Well, I don't plot particularly. I plot as I write, and so I don't write that much down, to be honest. And it was one of the worst pieces of advice I was ever given. When I was starting out, someone said, keep a notebook. If you don't keep a notebook, you're not a proper writer. And that is just such rubbish, because everybody writes differently. And I know I've spoken to lots of other writers, and quite a lot of them just have it in their head, basically. So it's
So I something I discovered. I had to learn how to write a series on the job, so to speak. And as I was writing the next one, I suddenly thought, what was the name of the lady in the shop? So then I started. I do have a certain amount written down, because my memory is truly appalling, and also I have quite a lot of dogs around, so I have to remember who's got what dog. And the thing is, all my dogs are based on real dogs. So I have to get things like their breed right and their colour right, and whether they like going on the beach or not, that sort of thing right. So that's as important as the details about the people, actually.
Well, thanks ever so much. I appreciate that. We've got 1 minute left.
We've got time for one more question. Cathy would like to ask, which crime fiction author did you read that first got you interested in the crime fiction genre, and who are you reading now?
Oh, that we can all do that one quickly. So Agatha Christie, Nancy Drew, Agatha Christie, Dorothy L. Sayers, who I'm reading at the moment. Honestly, I'm not reading anyone at the moment. I like very dark though. The N.W. Craven books, the Tilly and Poe books. I like reading dark at the moment because I'm writing light.
So for me, it was the Famous Five and the Secret Seven first got me into the whole sort of, detective crime sort of thing, Enid Blyton. And I'm reading, we've got Crime Fest coming up, so I'm reading from my panel there. So I'm reading something called Unburied by Heather Critchlow, and she's who I'm reading.
Well, it's Agatha Christie for me. I started young and I carried on reading Agatha Christie really. I read a sort of, I do actually probably read darker than I write. And I've just read a book by Jane Casey, which was very good. Brilliant.
Oh, Brett, we fitted that one in just great, didn't we? Look, it's bang on the time. So in my role as chair, what I'm going to do is say, first of all, huge thanks to Sarah and Mary. Thank you for question wrangling Sarah Todd Taylor. And to those of you who have been watching live, thank you for being with us. And for those of you who are going to be watching this at some point in the future at an indeterminate date, hello, thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Now, what I will do is take 30 seconds to say, next, I would also like to thank Danielle Devlin, who was with us right at the beginning. So thank you, Danielle. I really enjoyed that reading. Nerve-wracking though it might have been, it was brilliant. Thank you. I want to remind you that next year, 2025, oh my goodness me, from April the 25th to April the 27th, we're going to be live and in person in Aberystwyth. So you can start planning now. You can't say you weren't told to save the date, right? So please do consider coming to visit the wonderful town of Aberystwyth, which is a jewel on the coast of Wales. If you need an excuse to come to Wales itself, this is it. And you'll also be able to meet a whole bevy of wonderful Crime Cymru collective authors who are there. Well, the body count's going to be high. There will be blood on all the walls, but you can also say it will be wrapped up with comeuppances at the end of it. Thank you for being with us. Thank you to everybody here. And we'll say bye-bye for now.
And thanks for great questions, Cathy. Thank you. Bye.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
brilliant.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Cathy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.